Here we have 1.8 volt, as you can see. Integrated circuit that converts the main voltage to the VTT voltage for a DDR2 RAM. As you can see, we have 1.8 volt and we have here 0.9 volt. Hi, so I'm going to teach you the types of RAM or random access memory, okay? And we're going to discuss the voltages of each RAM, okay? So here we have types of RAM, random access memory, okay? So we're going to see the most used memory. Exactly, we're going to see 5 types of memory. So the first is the DDR1, okay? Second, DDR2, then DDR3, fourth, DDR4, and the last one, DDR5, okay? So for DDR1, we're going to see its voltage, the working voltage, okay? So there is two kinds of voltage for every RAM. The working voltage or the main voltage, okay? And the second voltage is the VTT or the voltage for terminal. But now let's see the main voltage. So for DDR1 we have 2.5 volts, DDR2 1.8 volts, for DDR3 we have 1.5 volts, for DDR4 we have 1.2 volt, and for DDR5 1.1 volt. Okay, so this is the main voltages for this kind of RAMs. So now we're going to see the VTT or the voltage terminal. Okay, so the voltage terminal for each RAM is the half of the main voltage. So for DDR1, we should divide 2.5 volt by 2. We get, as you can see, 1.25 volts. Okay. For DDR2, as you can see, always divided by 2, we have 0.9 volt. The same for DDR3, we have 0.75 volts. For DDR4, so DDR4 and DDR5 are very improved memories. They have a very increased frequency or speed. So as you can see, 0.6 volt for DDR4 and 0.55 volt for the DDR5. So this is the VTT. So now I'm going to show you some motherboards where we can see a real RAMs and real slots. So as you can see here, this is the integrated circuit that converts the main voltage to the VTT voltage for a DDR2 RAM. As you can see, we have 1.8 volt and we have here 0.9 volt. This IC converts 1.8 volt to 0.9 volt. Okay, so these two voltages are for DDR2 RAM. We have the IC is TPS 51100. Its part number is TPS, as you can see. This is the V in, okay? Here we have, as you can see, the main voltage for the RAM. Here we have the VDD. Here we have the VTT, voltage for terminals. So from 1.8 volt, we get 0.9 volt, as you can see, okay? And the same working principle for other types of memories. So as you can see, we have seen that from 1.8 volt, we get 0.9 volt using the IC, as you can see, the TPS 51100 IC. Okay? The same for other kind of memories. We can get the VTT using this kind of IC. But there is many types of IC. Okay, this IC is to get 0.9 volt. So now let's see in the motherboard. So here, if you want to check whether you have 1.8 volt or not, you should check the inductor. As you can see, the inductor or the capacitor. You will find 1.8 volt for DDR2. And the VTT, you will find it in terminals. For example, here, this is terminals. This is a network resistor. If you check this terminals, you can find 0.9 volt. So the RAM to work perfectly, it needs two voltages. A main voltage, 1.8 volt and 0.9 volt for DDR2. As you can see here, this is the DDR2 slot. Here we have 1.8 volt, as you can see. Okay, 1.8 volt. Okay, so here we have another motherboard with the same type of RAM. We have 1.8 volt also, as you can see. Here we have another motherboard. This is for the DDR3 RAM. This is this processor. This is i3 processor. Okay. Here we have the DDR3. So for DDR3, we should find normally 1.5 volt. Okay. But here, 1.5 volt is not clear here. We will see other motherboard. As you can see, we have 1.5 volt. Okay. As you can see, 1.5 volt. So 1.5 volt is the working voltage or the main voltage for DDR3 RAM. Okay, so always in the slot of every RAM, you will find its working voltage. Okay, so to summarize, there is 5 main RAMs: DDR1, as you can see, DDR2, 3, 4, and 5. So the working voltage for DDR1, as you can see, is 2.5 volt, and the VTT is 1.25 volt. DDR2 1.8 volt, 0.9 volt for VTT. Okay, using this IC. For DDR3, 1.5 volt main voltage. Okay, and for VTT 0.75 volt. For DDR4, as you can see, 1.2 volt divided by 2, we have 0.6 volt. For DDR5, 1.1 volt and 0.55 volt for VTT.